this, a bit of that, and a bit of the other. So there was a lot of influences. And it took a while for them all to come together. We regarded ourselves as a blues band. That's what we started out playing. I mean, we actually, the three of us, Simon, Paul Kossoff, myself, met up at a rehearsal place, the Nag's Head in Battersea, it was. And Andy Fraser came along, and it was just four guys when we first walked in there, and everybody knew how to play blues. It's a 12-bar thing, and after 4 hours, we were a band.
Well, Johnny was a schoolboy when he heard his first Beatles song.
Paul Rodgers is one of the most distinctive voices in rock music. His deep, soulful delivery, effortless control, and emotional authenticity have set him apart from the many vocalists who emerged from the British rock scene of the late 1960s and early 70s.
Don't you know that you are a shooting star? All the world will love you just as long as you are.
As the frontman of bands Bree, Bad Company, and later ventures such as The Firm and guest vocalist for Queen, he has demonstrated an unparalleled ability to merge raw power with a deep emotional connection to the music. His influences each played a crucial role in shaping his vocal approach, helping him to develop a style that remains as electrifying today as it was when he first stepped onto a stage. Rodgers grew up in Middlesbrough, a town with a strong working-class identity, where blues and soul music had found a devoted audience among young musicians eager to escape the dreariness of post-war Britain. Early on, he was drawn to singers who could convey profound emotion through their voice alone. It wasn't just about technical skill, it was about honesty, about fully inhabiting a song. Otis sang from a place deep inside himself, Rodgers has said, explaining how he first became captivated by Redding's approach. There was no artifice. You believed every word because he believed every word. Otis Redding's influence on Rodgers cannot be overstated. From his earliest recordings with Free, there was a clear sense that Rodgers had absorbed Redding's ability to make a song feel lived in.
Try your little tenderness, yeah.
He wasn't just delivering lyrics, he was experiencing them in real time. That intensity set him apart from many of his contemporaries. While other British rock singers took their cues from the blues greats of the 1950s, Rodgers dug deeper into the emotional wellspring of soul. I learned to relive the song every time I sang it, he explained. That was something I took from Otis. You don't just sing the words, you feel them again and again, as if it's the first time.
Every single day, I got a heartache coming my way.
Beyond Redding's phrasing and delivery, Rodgers also admired his stage presence. Redding had a way of drawing in an audience, not through theatrics, but through sheer emotional force. He didn't need to overcompensate with excessive movement or grand gestures. His voice carried all the intensity that was needed. Rodgers took that lesson to heart, cultivating a presence that felt both commanding and intimate. Ray Charles was another major influence, shaping Rodgers' understanding of phrasing, timing, and vocal nuance. Charles had the ability to blend blues, gospel, and jazz into something that felt completely natural, never forced or contrived. Rodgers recognized that skill as something truly special. Ray had an incredible way of phrasing, he said. He could take a simple line and make it feel like a conversation, like he was speaking directly to you. That conversational quality became a key part of Rodgers' own style. It's what makes his voice so compelling. Not just the strength behind it, but the way he delivers a line, as though he is confiding in the listener.
All I need is a friend, someone to give me a helping hand.
Charles's influence is particularly evident in the way Rodgers plays with rhythm, stretching or shortening phrases to enhance the emotional impact of a lyric. This wasn't something that could be learned through mere imitation. It required an intuitive feel for the music. Rodgers had that instinct from the beginning, but listening to Charles gave him a blueprint for refining it. Rod Stewart was another singer whose vocal style resonated deeply with Rodgers.
I'm walking up on mornings such as this, and thought exactly the same as I'm thinking now. Every night for a year I've slept alone. My cold damn room looks worse than me.
The two came up in the same era, emerging from the same British blues explosion, but Rodgers has always been open about his admiration for Stewart's raw, unpolished delivery. Rod had that rasp, that grit, Rodgers once said. He sang with this raw, lived-in quality that really spoke to me. Stewart's early recordings with the Faces and as a solo artist had a rough-edged authenticity that was rooted in blues and soul.
Watching all the trucks roll by, dreaming up an alibi.
Unlike some of the more theatrical rock vocalists of the time, Stewart never sounded as if he were putting on a performance. He simply sounded like himself, unfiltered and unrestrained. Rodgers identified with that approach, seeing it as a way to connect more deeply with an audience. Muddy Waters, the legendary bluesman, was perhaps the most foundational influence of all.
You say you love me, baby. You did. Please call me on the phone sometime.
For many British musicians of Rodgers' generation, Waters represented the true essence of the blues. His voice carried authority, not because he was loud, but because every word he sang felt earned. Muddy had this power in his voice that just knocked you over, Rodgers recalled. It wasn't about shouting, it was about presence. That presence, the ability to command attention without resorting to vocal acrobatics or excessive volume, became a defining characteristic of Rodgers' own style. There's a restraint in his singing that makes the emotional peaks hit even harder.
She stood in the street, smiling from my head to her feet.
He knows when to hold back, when to let a line breathe, and when to unleash the full force of his voice. That level of control, learned from artists like Waters and Charles, is what makes him such a masterful singer. Rodgers' work with Free showcased all of these influences in a raw, unfiltered way. Songs like All Right Now and Wishing Well carried a deep, bluesy swagger, but it was the quieter moments, tracks like Be My Friend and Love You So, that truly highlighted the depth of his vocal ability. He wasn't just a powerful singer, he was a deeply expressive one. The way he could transition from a near whisper to a soaring high note within the same phrase spoke to the kind of emotional range that set him apart from so many of his peers.
Wow, this is, and there's so much in that voice and in this story of...
With Bad Company, Rodgers refined his approach even further. The band's music was leaner, more structured, but his voice remained the centerpiece. Tracks like Feel Like Making Love and Shooting Star demonstrated his ability to tell a story through song, pulling the listener in with a vocal performance that felt immediate and personal.
Bad company till the day I die.
His ability to balance grit with smoothness, intensity with restraint, was what made him such an enduring figure in rock music. Even in later years when he performed with Queen, Rodgers never lost the essence of what made him unique. He didn't attempt to mimic Freddie Mercury. Instead, he brought his own style to the songs, staying true to the influences that had shaped him. That ability to remain authentic, even when stepping into an entirely different musical legacy, speaks to the strength of his artistic identity. Rodgers' vocal influences run deep, but they never overshadow his own voice. He took elements from Redding's soul, Charles's phrasing, Stewart's grit, and Waters' authority, blending them into something that is unmistakably his own. Decades into his career, his voice still carries the same depth, the same emotional weight that it always has.
A shooting star.
It's a rare thing for a singer to maintain that level of authenticity for so long, but for Rodgers, it was never an act. It was simply who he was from the very beginning.